Sonic Movie 3 was a huge flop in Japan with an abysmal performance of only $180,000 on opening day. This surprised a lot of people, but hardcore fans already knew Sonic is disliked and even outright ignored by the Japanese.
マリオ作ったのメーカーは任天堂でしょ、なのでソニックは
ソニック任天堂じゃないの？
じゃあこのキャラクター知っているかなあ、マリオマリオこのキャラクターはわかんない
Imagine creating a global icon, only to find the audience in your home country doesn't embrace it. That's Sonic's heartbreaking reality in Japan. Why is it that Sonic became invisible in his country of origin? This is the story of the fascinating missteps from way back in the 90s up until present day that made Sonic fail in Japan. To understand Sonic's struggles in Japan, we have to go back to the early 90s. While SEGA was dominating Japanese arcades, their home console, the Mega Drive, known as Genesis in the West, was far behind in the market, competing against Nintendo's Super Famicom, which sold an incredible 16 million units in Japan. The Mega Drive managed just 3 million units, a fraction of its global sales. Sonic 2, for example, sold over 7 million copies worldwide, but Japan contributed just 260,000 copies. In Japan, Sonic wasn't a cultural phenomenon. He was just another game on a failing console. The key question is, did Sonic fail because the Mega Drive failed? Or did the Mega Drive fail because Sonic couldn't capture the Japanese audience? Sonic was tailor-made with flashy, bold, brash, and rebellious traits, designed to appeal to Western audiences and dethrone Mario and Nintendo overseas. Sonic Team modeled Sonic on icons like Michael Jackson to appeal to 90s pop culture in the West. Even Sonic's color palette, red, white, and blue, was inspired by the American flag. His edgy, cool guy persona contrasted sharply with Japan's preference for humble, approachable mascots like Mario and Pikachu. A particularly telling moment was SEGA of Japan's decision not to release arcade ports of Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 in Japan, despite other SEGA branches doing it in other countries. Was Sonic's attitude really the problem? Or did SEGA's focus on the global market alienate its own backyard? The Mega Drive era struggled, but hope was on the horizon with the Sega Saturn. While it was a failure in the West, the Saturn marked a rare moment of success for Sega's consoles in Japan. This was the moment that could have turned things around, but instead, it set the stage for Sonic's struggles. The problem was, Sonic Team couldn't release a mainline Sonic game for the console. Other than spin-off releases like Sonic R and 3D Blast, all Sega did to try to capture the Saturn audience was releasing Sonic Jam, a compilation of older Sonic games. The intent was to reintroduce the character, but the Japanese Saturn library was already packed with brand new 3D and more complex titles, overshadowing Sonic in comparison. Ironically, Sonic Team made a Saturn game that was a huge hit in Japan, Nights into Dreams. The funny thing is, fans of Nights didn't even know what the Sonic in Sonic Team meant. Quote, "When we made Nights into Dreams, we got a lot of letters from fans asking, what's the Sonic Team? And who's Sonic? If it weren't for these letters, Sonic Jam wouldn't even have been made." However, Sega's swan song was yet to come. The Dreamcast was their last shot in the console market. Would the launch title, Sonic Adventure, finally cement Sonic's legacy in Japan? The game was a bold reimagining of the franchise, combining 3D gameplay with JRPG-inspired storytelling. Most players may not notice it, but this was Sonic's first real attempt to resonate with Japanese cultural tastes, and it paid off, with the game having very good sales in Japan. Japanese players appreciated Sonic Adventure's cinematic approach, especially its kaiju-inspired perfect chaos villain and disaster film-style opening. The anime-like designs of the human characters and the game's shonen-like narrative and dialogue felt familiar to Japanese audiences. But shortly after Sonic Adventure was a commercial success, the Dreamcast was crushed by Sony's PlayStation 2, and Sega exited the console market. The Dreamcast's failure meant Sonic's moment in the spotlight was short-lived. As Sega transitioned to a third-party developer, they launched Sonic X, an anime series aimed at boosting Sonic's popularity in Japan. featuring a theme song by Dragon Ball Z's singer Hironobu Kageyama and the character Chris Thorndike, made to relate to Japanese kids whose parents have no time for them because of their excessive work culture. But Sonic X flopped spectacularly. The show's ratings plummeted so badly that its third season, the Meta-Rex Saga, never aired in Japan. It's a similar case to the Sonic OVA from 1996, which was a pilot for a possible classic Sonic anime, but flopped. Ironically, Sonic X became a massive hit in the West, highlighting the growing cultural divide between Sonic's Japanese and Western audiences. Meanwhile, Sonic's games during this era suffered from inconsistent quality. Titles like Sonic Heroes were successful, but others, like Sonic 2006, would repel Japanese gamers that already didn't have the West's goodwill towards the franchise. Therefore, Sega seemingly gave up on trying to appeal to the East, up until one specific game that may have changed everything. In 2022, Sonic Frontiers marked a turning point for Sonic in Japan. For the first time in years, a Sonic game resonated strongly with Japanese audiences, and it wasn't by accident. Sega had a very smart strategy. That paid off. Sonic Frontiers leaned heavily into Japanese cultural influences. The game's open-world design, tone, and boss fights drew direct comparisons to Breath of the Wild and Neon Genesis Evangelion. Not only did the Titan battles go viral on social media, but Rei Ayanami's voice actor played the role of Sage, and that's a big deal, because anime voice actors are treated as celebrities in Japan. Sega also invested strongly in marketing. They started sponsoring Corone, a very popular Japanese VTuber that had discovered Sonic and started playing the games on stream. They collaborated with Monster Hunter, an extremely beloved franchise in Japan, and featured the popular band One OK Rock on the game's soundtrack and promotional material. After decades of struggle, Sonic found his stride in Japan with Frontiers, proving it's never too late to win hearts. He finally felt like he belonged. The game sold so well that anime series, like Shangri-La Frontier, started referencing it in the backgrounds of the episodes. So, what happened to Sonic Movie 3? While Frontiers found success, the Sonic movies were tremendous failures in Japan. Movie 1 and 2 barely made under $3 million combined, and 3's performance was equally as bad. This is especially curious, as like Frontiers, the third movie was specifically marketed for Japan in various ways. It brought back One OK Rock, features Tokyo in the story, and was even renamed to Sonic X Shadow, Tokyo Mission, to make that abundantly clear. The marketing was good, but that alone doesn't sell the movie. Unlike Frontiers, the movie's storytelling itself has a distinctly Western tone that Japanese audiences find hard to connect with. It's a very American kind of comedy. Even huge American blockbusters like the MCU at its peak historically struggled in Japan, being vastly outperformed by Demon Slayer or Your Name. Sonic was no exception. It's just too Hollywood. A piece of media being aesthetically Japanese, like Sonic Movie 3, doesn't mean anything to them. It needs to be tonally Japanese, like Frontiers. It doesn't help that Movie 1 and 2 were released with months of delay in Japan, coming out in June of 2020 and August of 2022, instead of February 2020 and April 2022. While Sonic may never achieve Mario-level fame in Japan, Frontiers proved that with the right approach, he can bridge the gap. Even projects like Sonic and Friends are tapping into Japan's love for cute mascots. Will Sega continue to build on this with the next main games, or will Frontiers be a fluke like Adventure 1? Only time will tell. But what I can tell you is this. We at Speed Shoes have insider information that if you subscribe to our channel, Sega will make a new Sonic anime by MAPPA that turns all the characters into waifus. Obviously, everyone really wants to watch that, so subscribe.